Hi, good evening, Patrick. Good evening to the viewers.
Good evening to you, Clinton viewers. Yeah, I think tonight is rather special. I couldn't help but notice when you looked at those clips, what didn't you see?
It was dry though. I don't know. You need to help me out here, Patrick. What I did enjoy was the sound of those 20 bells, right?
The sound was
Um,
good, but the concern I had is, and you will possibly agree with me now if I bring this forward now. Um, when we go rallying, everything happens. You pull into a control, you do your paperwork, and off you go.
yeah,
But
yeah,
the guys assisting you on the other side of the car is sort of a mystery. You notice them, but you don't take note who it is.
yeah.
The only time you realize they not they or anytime somebody pays attention to them is if they're not there, because then there's a problem.
If the stage is running late, so
Absolutely.
I'm 100
But
percent with you.
you know, it's one of those amazing things in the sport. You can't do without them. But when they're there, nobody notices them really.
Yeah,
And you've got to give them credit. They stand out there in the sun. They stand out there in the wind. They stand out there in the rain for the benefit of the competitor. And there's a good element in that, in the sense that you grow into the sport by becoming a marshal. You grow into the sport by learning how to run a service crew, by getting involved in the behind the scenes element.
yeah,
But when you're in that behind the scenes element, yeah, you're there, but nobody sees you. And tonight's family, in my opinion, went through all those motions for more than 20 years. They would be those faces without names that end up in the middle of nowhere to do controls for the benefit of competitors. And it's great to see that they have grown to the level where they actually acquired a car to come and compete in the championship. And then they've got a new angle to it as well because of a unique situation in their own family.
yeah,
And it's great to bring awareness to another element of our lives which you tend to know about but don't pay attention to because it doesn't affect you.
yeah. No, no, for sure. So, look, I, there was a portion of the clip where they pulled in the control marshals, right? And I so agree with you that there's certain elements of the sport where the spectators or the people that maybe is from outside of the sport don't see the amount of work, time, and effort that it takes from the organizers, the marshals, the clerk of the course, to plot and plan and basically get an event to be successful. And like you said, when they are not there, then becomes the issue, especially when it comes to a safety aspect also. And we are always easy to critique the organizers and MSA, but everybody's there for a reason, for with a certain job function. And I think tonight is really to applaud um, the Croy family that's always been involved. When I basically did intro to them, they've been involved since the early or the late 80s. But additionally to them, I think there's so much more that we can talk about because there's been other families also, other participants that's also been involved. And I think we need to applaud all the marshals and everybody that's involved in just organizing rallies. We can never reward them for the amount of time and effort and energy that they put in. And as you know, we know certain individuals that even sacrifice their families to a certain extent, right, for the love of the sport. And yeah, sometimes it's always just good just to pay some respect and to say thanks.
We always talk about in the good old days we talked about the 5 rally clubs in the Western Cape. That was the Western Province Motor Club, the Cape Peninsula Motorcycle and Car Club, the Cape Car and Motorcycle Club, Somerset West Motor Club, and the Witzenberg Motor Club. Sadly, that has sort of become a 2-club series at this stage. But the one element that's always been involved and hardly gets mentioned in the same breath would be the Cape Rally Controls Group. And even though they're not a club as such, in the sense that they don't represent drivers and navigators, without them, the sport will just not function in the Western Cape or in anywhere in the country without the marshals. So yes, it's great to highlight that tonight. And I think you couldn't have picked a better family than the Croy family, who has literally been involved for many years.
Yeah, but I see Andrew is commenting here, but where are they? Because we were waiting for them because of the power that's supposed to come back on at 8. So let's see.
Yeah, that unfortunately we have to tell our viewers is part of the problem tonight, in the sense that we're from different areas, affected differently by load shedding. And at the moment, the Croy family is trying to get back live on air, because their area took a bit longer than ours to get the benefit of power again.
Yeah, we live in a country with a lot of challenges, right? But it's still a good country to stay in.
Yeah, but let's leave this topic alone. It's not. I don't want to spoil a good program now.
It means that I have to go sleep.
Let's rather chat about the 2 pictures behind us. Look at the history involved there. I'm going to give away my age, because I took this photograph. But that is Robbie Robertson standing on the left there with Stefan van Dijk and Mark Pim, with Theo as marshal. That's at the Overberg oval track. So that would have been a Bredasdorp rally, or it would have probably have been a Bredasdorp rally. That creates the whole atmosphere of the sport. You've got Robbie, who was probably a competitor at the time, keeping a close eye as to what's happening on screen or what's happening in front of him. Stefan van Dijk looks like he's having a chat there with Robbie. Mark Pim obviously concentrating on doing the documentation. And Theo stands with a clock in his hand, preparing them to go into the control. And chances are that Theo was by himself. So he did the clock in and the actual start of the stage at the Overberg oval track by himself. And it sounds very simple, but put a field of 30 cars there, and the man's a busy man every time the cars reach him.
For sure, and those were the heydays, eh? There's the family.
Good evening, guys.
Is that Croy's or crazy?
Sorry.
We're still in darkness.
Since you didn't want to join us, we've been discussing the family in the meantime. So sorry if you didn't hear that, you missed out.
We've been listening.
Okay, well,
unfortunately, Eskom can't put our mobiles off. So
there we go. That's the spirit.
Well, if I look at that photograph on the screen now, we have to start with the most important member of the family, and that'll have to be Mom. Because you guys can't survive without her.
No. Yeah.
Andrea, take us back to many years, around about 1987, when this fun started in your family.
Sure, that was years ago. It was like 34 years ago. Theo started with friends of his. They went on a rally. I remember one Friday evening, I came home from work and I picked my son up in Wynberg at Bidwoomer Station through the train window, my eldest son. because Theo had gone on a rally. First time ever, I think, that he went marshalling, and from then it started.
Did you have any involvement in the sport beforehand? Did you know anything about what he was going to do?
No, we've
So
been to the 9-hour race at Killarney and things like that, but not with rallying.
And we were spectators all the time since I think early 80s, 1982, 83.
So
the
what
rally
what made you take the decision to get involved?
Um,
There's a lot of people watching, and I think they're interested to know what triggered you to get involved in the sport.
There were there was a friend of a friend actually who was involved. I think he knew Derek Jacobs or one of them. And this friend of mine, Wendell Magson is his name, he asked me if I want to go and join them. So they did the controls and I just sort of observed. And I didn't do anything at that time yet. And I think from that time we liked it. Then we found out that there was a Cape Rally Controls group, and we got involved there. We joined that, and that's where it started.
Well, when you say that's where it started, you take the average person looking at this now and having not been involved in the sport have got no idea really as to what it entails. But we've just mentioned the fact that you guys would spend hours in the middle of nowhere setting up a control, waiting for cars patiently in the dust and the dirt and the rain and everything. It takes a special type of person to be that dedicated, because what did you benefit from it? You didn't really come home with a bag full of goodies or anything.
No.
This is all purely for the love of the sport.
We were happy to come back sometimes with a little plaque that said best end control or best start control for the day. That was it. That was all we wanted.
And the nationals, we got caps and
all
t-shirts.
we worked for.
So would it be fair to say that even though it's not intended to be a competition, there was a bit of pride involved here? It was a case of not showing each other up, but you all tried your very best to deliver the best service.
Yes, no, we just tried not to make any boo-boos in the field out there, because I mean, you get a guy like Guy Hodgson pulling up to your start control, and he bamboozles you so that you almost give him extra money, And if you don't watch that, then you're gonna lose it. And that's
you must talk about this.
You're bringing in another element here now, because we haven't even touched on that aspect now. There's a control, but your knowledge of the sport is very important, because if you just said an experienced navigator will come there and try his luck, he's going to try and push you.
Yeah. I'm sure they still do it today.
Absolutely. It's human nature. If they can score a minute, they're going to score a minute. That's the bottom line.
Patrick is blushing.
That's like telling a driver he's not allowed to shortcut. If he sees a shortcut, his horns go and off he goes. He can't help it. It's instinctive.
Yeah. No, we were too clever for those guys. We learned from, I think, one of the best at the time. I was going to only bring up his name a little later, because he also became involved in all the other stuff that we did in rallying, as far as I'm concerned, was Derek Jacobs. And a lot that I know, that controls and whatever came after that, I learned from him.
Did you ever find yourself in a situation where somebody chanced his luck and it was questioned afterwards? Can you mention a few situations of that nature without trying? This is not to knock anybody, but the reality of it.
We did, and I think it was that Einster Guy Hodgson on a national event, and I think it was late at night. It was in the dark, yes. And I don't know what he tried with me, and I did the TC, and he had me in such a test that I forgot my clipboard in the car. I think he was seated on the right-hand side, so Serge, I think, was driving it. Was the left-hand drive car at the time or something like that? Or it could have been someone else that was with him. I can't remember his driver. But then I forgot my clipboard with my timesheet and everything on his lap in his car because I and as he moved off from the TC towards the start, I just saw the door opening and a clipboard come flying out the window of the car. He just threw it out there. Yeah, but
Well-
I don't think they managed to pull any time off us. We were too clever by that time already.
Take us, and once again, I'm not going to ask you to show up anybody or any of that, but you must have had some interesting altercations. You already mentioned Guy Hodgson pushing the bubble at every opportunity, but you must have had a favorite over the years and somebody that sort of forever getting at you on these events.
Yeah,
with
we had our favorites. I'm not going to mention any names.
Mostly local guys.
Well,
so, okay, Faisal Day
Yes.
is just on screen there, but I see he's making good progress with building his car again. So I think he's favouring up with the marshals here. He's trying to get a good innings
Score
before he
some
comes
points.
back again.
I think times have changed so much since we marshaled that I don't know if we'll be able to. Well, I probably won't be able to do it, but Theo probably will be able to do it again. And
But talking about locals, did you not go to the Tara also in Namibia?
Yes,
Theo went,
in my years with the controls group, I remember my very first trip was with Derek Jacobs and Mark Adriaanse, Peter Peterson, all those guys. Rosario Kleintjes, I don't know if you guys still remember him.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do.
Didn't Dave also go with?
No, he wasn't with. But then that was my first trip out to PE. And I went out there to go and do controls. And Rosario and I spent the whole 2 days of that event in the follow-up vehicle. Because they hadn't placed us with the PE groups that were there. So everybody had left, and then the two of us were still left there. So the follow-up guy, he was alone in his bakkie, double cab bakkie, and Rosario and I jumped in with him. So he didn't have a navigator. Rosario navigated for him, and I took the paperwork through the back window. So that was my first away trip as a marshal as such, but I did no marshalling whatsoever. And then a few years later, we went back there again, and we did quite a bit of marshalling. We went to teach people there how it's done, especially when those new, the new clocks, which are now old, those red, orange, and green robots. I don't know if they still use it, I think.
And the nationals, yes.
Then we had to go and teach them how to work those clocks. I think were the old rally time clocks, the original ones.
The original ones, yeah.
Yeah, and then we also had a couple of trips to the Tara in Namibia. That was also nice, quite learning experience. They put you in the middle of nowhere. I remember I did some controls on my own. There was a start control, and it was on old Fritz Flachberger's farm, and he had lions on the farm there. And that time they dropped us at our points, but because there's so few cars there, they put the TC on one point, and 10 meters further is the start. So the boards are that far apart. So the car basically starts where the TC is. And I had to control or man that control on my own with the sound of lions roaring in the background. And I don't know if the things are in the cave or if they're roaming free because there's just bush around. So it's very scary times. And it's in the middle of the day, 40 degrees. You don't. If I had to run from a lion there, I would have just told him to come and eat. I can't ask.
The Cape Rally Controls Group. The two of you were part of the committee for many years. There's two elements I'd like to the original. How did that get formed? And secondly, your involvement in there. It was very strong at one stage. How do you create that interest? We need marshals back in the sport. We need to keep the sport floating. The sport doesn't work without marshals. And somehow that interest must be nurtured again.
Yeah.
And I know the two of you did your share, so we can't expect you to go back and do it all over again. But
What I can tell you about those times, and I would like Andrea also to speak about it, is that time we never used to if I can use the Afrikaans word here, subat marshals to come and do an event. They used to phone us to ask when is the next event I'm available. And I don't know what it was that we did, or Derek and Rosario. We were probably the main people in there at the time. And some names escaped me, but I can remember a few. We kept it going by staying in contact with people. And like I said, people used to even contact us to ask when is the next event. How many stages is it going to be? And that time it wasn't like you do one stage and you stay there for the whole day. We had to move around, and people they wanted to do it. They came in their own cars, and we got very little fuel monies at the time.
But then your petrol lasted longer then.
But that was all. that was all we did it for. And the guys were, they were all enthusiastic. They wanted to see the rally cars and that kind of thing. We never had to beg people to come and do controls at those years.
it's actually a great way to get involved in the sport because it puts you in direct contact with the competitors. It puts you in direct contact with the officials of the event. It gives you an insight the normal spectator will never get on a rally. It does come with a bit of hard work, but it does have its rewards as well. But even the controls group is in need of leadership. In other words, we got to get that going again. Everything seems to have fallen by the wayside with rallying taking a rather serious knock in the last couple of years, and this pandemic has certainly not helped in the past 2 years. So, but I don't believe that the spirit of rallying is dead. It's still there. It's just somehow all these little sections must be put together again to rebuild the sport.
Yes.
It must be, because when we were involved, I can remember Derek said to me, "You my secretary and no one else," and I was, there was no ways I could say no, I'm not being the secretary. I think that was probably for about 10 years. And then when Derek left, Rosario said to me, "You are not leaving, you are my secretary." So it just carried on from there. And we had fundraisers, because then we were still at the gun club. We had fundraisers, we had get-togethers regularly. And on a rally, we made sure, as a chief marshal, you go around to your different points to go and make sure the marshal is there. If they're not there, you set up for them. Then they just come in there. They're running late. They come in and they do their thing and they move on from there. And it was great fun, because I can remember when Theo was chief marshal, we'd sit with the instructions. He'd go out on the check run. He'd come back. Then we had to work at kilometers. We had to work at monies. It takes a lot of work, behind the scenes. And it was great fun then. Even our boys were involved. Terry, for one, was like 3 weeks old, or that just over 2 months old, on a rally, the Trocento rally. And I can remember in between stages or in between cars, I had to jump into the car to either change his nappy or to feed him. Wow, it's raining out there. So, and he ended up on the TV as well as the baby in the pram on the Montague rally at the start control. So we brought in Theo's cousin Clint and his brother, his late brother, and other people even Theo's sister and her family joined us on the event as marshals because we was running short of marshals. And we had great fun. It was a family event. Afterwards, you'd get together and you'd have your fun. I remember the Holiday Inn on the Nationals. We'd go for breakfast. Everybody gets dressed up the Sunday morning and off we traipse up to the Holiday Inn for breakfast and the awards and everything. And I don't know, I don't know if they do it now yet anymore, the marshals, best control, best start, best end control and things like that. Maybe they should bring that in. Maybe that will be a draw card to get marshals in. But we definitely need to get marshals on the events.
Well,
you see also those years the competitors were also involved to a certain extent because the organizer used to then go and speak to some of the competitors and get some names of marshals that they thought stood out a little bit, just by maybe a friendly gesture or something like that, stuff like that. Yes.
I must agree, and it's something. Even though I said it's a face that you don't put a name to, you do remember those contacts on an event. You certainly take note of a guy that's friendly and helpful. You do note if somebody gives you a stiff lip or something for some reason or the other. But when you're under pressure in the car, competing. A friendly face at a control certainly goes a long way to help. And it doesn't need to be a long conversation. It's just I want to say the attitude of the marshal makes it a good one or a bad one. And somehow your brain registers that. And at the end of the rally, it's not very difficult to sit down and say, oh, but the control at that stage was actually very helpful. You might not remember the name, but you'll certainly be able to say, at that specific point, I really enjoyed the rally type of thing.
Yeah. No, we've had plenty of those moments where the driver or the navigator just wants a little smile and maybe a little bit of a friendly chat. How's it going? You guys still doing okay? Is the car still okay? Stuff like that. And that's what we used to do. And what we didn't even have to instill it into the marshals that we had at the time. We were all just like that.
Yeah, that came naturally. It was you just. But then you grew older, and the boys grew older.
And wiser.
Yeah, but when you say wiser, normally when people say wiser, it's a case of they grew up and said enough, and I'm stopping. But in your case, you just flipped the coin, and it got worse. Because now you went and bought a car.
Yeah, but there's more before that. It was
before the car, yes.
Before that, and I'm just looking at some of those pictures in the background there with, I think, some of those, that car number 65, those events. Those years when I used to start the car off at the start control, my left toe was underneath that front wheel, and he dare not move that car before I say he can go.
I never noticed that. We should have tried eating it.
I always used to do that. Then I don't remember the year, but then there was a couple that took over. They probably don't exist anymore.
Avril and Francois.
But a couple by the name of Avril and Francois, I can't remember their surnames. They came into the controls group, and then I think Avril got voted in as the chairperson, and then that's when we decided to take a back seat in the controls group. We still did some controls, but we weren't involved with the running of the controls group anymore. And then of course after that I joined CC, and then I became involved with route marking, which also has got a 20-year span of my life, I think, including Terry mostly. Tyler at the back also, he's only 18, but he also helped us a lot. And My friend James over here.
He's got tire.
His other better off.
So what you're actually saying is you supported rule number 1 in motorsport. Now, rule number 1 says drivers do not make mistakes. So if you've done many years of route marking, you don't need a navigator. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but I look for the arrowing. And of course, I criticize it because I consider myself a perfectionist. So if it's not right, then it's not right. That's it.
Yeah, well, that depends on when you say it's not right. You know, when you're sitting in the bush because you made a mistake and you say it's not right, that's not really defending it in a good way.
What I mean is, to me, 100 meters is 100 meters.
Yes.
But that's important. I mean, now these days it's easy with the route notes. I don't think the guys bother about that 100 meters. They just want to see where that green arrow is and brake as late as possible beyond that green arrow. I don't know. That's how I would drive, right, Clint?
Yeah, but you need to start at the beginning, right? You first need to take the viewers through the technicality of the two arrows. I haven't rallied for such a long time. I can't remember if there's still two. There's one these days. But just explain the 100 meters and also the angles and what it all means. Just for background.
Okay. Just for the viewers' sake, on a rally stage, be it gravel or tar, whatever, we in the old days, let me start there, where we still use the tulips. Then we used to count down on that Odo, the old haul trips, and we used to count the navigator used to count the driver down, tell him 300 meters, 200, 100, whatever, and then tell him there's the turn. So let me explain the arrows first, or the colors of the arrows first. We, over the years, we probably used two different colors, mainly yellow and green. That arrow is normally 100 meters before any change of direction on any road. And then the arrow is placed in a specific way where we look at the sort of degree of turn. So if it's 90 degrees, the arrow would point straight either to the right or to the left. And if it's slightly open, the arrow would point up. And if it's a hairpin, the arrow would point down. So the green arrow will already, 100 meters before, will already show you what kind of turn to expect up front. And that would be 100 meters further up. And then the two red arrows we would place on that corner, and the cars are supposed to go in between the two red arrows. A lot of them don't, especially the top guys. They take most of the arrows out so that the guys at the back don't know where to go.
People like Clint. People like Clint.
I'm sure Patrick knows about that.
We can mention a few names, but I don't think they will be too impressed. But yes, I've certainly experienced that, especially on the national rallies where, let's say a few well-known people would prefer to take out the arrow for the benefit of not having the following guys to worry about. But it's a very critical part of the sport, and it was actually an art in its own right. And when it's done in a consistent manner, it really was to the benefit of the competitors, because you became reliant on that information. You actually believed what you saw. But the moment that's inconsistent, you lose faith in the entire event, because you'll never trust it again on that event, because it doesn't. One surprise is enough. You don't want it again.
We were, and I'm speaking for James and my two boys here as well, because we all did arrowing. And we were so meticulous that if we weren't sure of it, we would be 100 meters before a turn, and we weren't sure of the gradient or the degree of the turn, we would drive down to that turn first and go, and we get out of the vehicle, we go and check it out first. Then we decide, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then we go back 100 meters and we go and mark it as we see it. As I normally would look at it as if a rally driver would be coming down the road and, looking at it. And also we used to actually look at the actual road. If the road had a long 1.5 kilometer stretch to a left 9 at the end, that green arrow wouldn't be exactly 100 meters from the red arrow. It would be 120 or 130 meters, because that car would be coming down there at breakneck speed and they'll probably want to brake a little earlier. So that's how we used to arrow. And I hope the guys who are doing it now are sort of following that same.
Yeah.
Well, what I would like to touch on is you're one of the few people that can claim to have been involved in the sport in both eras. In other words, you did the tulip era, and you're now in the safety note era. From your perspective as a marshal, as an arrower, as a behind the scenes man, which of the two eras would you prefer? Which would you favor?
I think the root notes, if I can start there, because if I go back a little, James and I were arrowing on a national one day. Where was that, James? I can't remember. And
how many nationals didn't?
And we kept driving. We were arrowing, and we kept driving past this road that we had to turn into. But we were using tulips. In the meantime, the tulips were incorrect. The tulips were showing that there's a road to the right and we must turn there. And we drove, and it looks like a road, but then it goes down into a river. So no, it can't be. And eventually we discovered that the tulips that we were given was just that one drawing was replaced or something, or was removed, and we couldn't find this place. But we also had the root notes lying next to us, because we never used to arrow with the root notes. And then I said to James, let's pick up the root notes and see where we are on the stage. And we use the root notes and see what that does. And within 5 minutes, we were out of there. So
it does give you a lot more information on the route. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But now we started off as marshals. We started off as officials behind the scene, arrowing and all kinds of things. There were karting involved somewhere as well. Who was the karter amongst you?
This one,
well, at least he looks like the lightest one between the lot. We won't say the youngest one.
We can talk about his karting now, but I just want to tell you how it started, actually. He was 8 years old when Warren Kohler sent I don't know if it was did we have WhatsApp that time already? Yes. And he sent this thing that he got from Motorsport or something, that SACRA was looking for youngsters that they could train. And we had to write a motivational little letter, and I, of course, used all my rallying bits, and this was our Auntie Joy that I had to write to. And I, of course, used all our rallying experience and all that to say what we did for motorsport over all these years. And I think maybe that's what got him into it. And then I think there were 22 applicants that year. And of the 22, they narrowed it down to 3. He was one of the 3. And then when they accepted 2 of the 3. And after the 4 months, they had a goal that they had to reach. And he reached that goal within the first 2 months. And then for that year, the intake for that year, he was the only one that was retained in the karting academy with with Joy and that crew there, the karting
Tyler,
academy.
now it's your opportunity. You must tell us how did you enjoy that experience?
I really did. I really enjoyed it. It took me a while to get used to the karting. Even though I was on pace, it took me a while to get onto the top. But with practice, they say practice makes perfect. So with more practice, I obviously got, okay, I would say the best. But for me, in my eyes, I saw that I was the best. Like in that way.
Well, you got to believe in yourself, otherwise nobody else will. The element I want to touch on with karting, if you talk to most of the professional drivers of our era, they will all tell you the best place to start is in karting. Whether you go rallying, whether you go racing, whether you go anything, karting is that it teaches you skills in setting up the car, it teaches you driving skills because it's basically a reaction sport. The kart becomes part of you, so you think and do, and the kart responds immediately. Is that your experience of it as well?
Correct, that is my experience of it. I mean, sitting, say, about 3 centimeters, 2 centimeters from the ground, you feel everything. You feel when the kart wants to step out, and I'm sure in rallying, drivers can agree with me. The smallest bit of the car stepping out, your adjustment on the wheel then brings that car obviously stable and stabilizes the car. Same as in karting. The smallest bit of the rear wheels kicking out, you do that alignment on the wheel, and it obviously brings yourself steady.
And with a year in the karting concluded, where did it take you then?
To rallying.
No. Before we go to rallying, Patrick, right? Tyler needs to take us through the simulator experience. Because so I think it was last year, the year before, during COVID or whatever. We
Beginning of COVID.
Against it, at the beginning of COVID. So all the rallyists, or I think that the younger rallyists, right, got together, and we had like a small little championship. I'm young still, eh? At least. So, and to the point of the karting and illustrating Tyler's skill, I think he actually illustrated the skill that he was taught in karting. So to Patrick's question, I just want to build on to Patrick's question. Does that also play a role, or did that also come into play? And especially with a setup, what did you learn out of karting that you actually utilize on the simulator? And then after the simulator, obviously then going into the actual rallying. Patrick and I always have a discussion about this. Is simulators or is simulation actual racing, or is it real? Maybe just give us your insight or your opinion on that.
So what I've learned from karting and I took across to the simulator is basically, so in karting they teach you to either be on the throttle or on the brake, not on both. Okay, I know that's different, but you gotta choose which one you're on. So taking from the karting to the simulator, driving in the simulator to keep your car smooth or whatever, you're not flat down, or throwing the throttle or throwing the brake down. You smooth with it. You get gentle. From karting, you learn to be gentle, to be smooth with the car, and also from there, that again brought on to rallying. You got to be gentle with the car, even in the simulator. To basically, because obviously the seat doesn't move, your steering then comes to play where if the back kicks out, you will feel the steering will move in a slight way, and you got to basically control it. And bringing the karting into it took me to a point where I could use my smooth adjustments to bring the car straight, going over jump sideways and catching the car, bringing it straight. It all came from the karting, smooth and gentle.
Okay, and I see Faisal is commenting to say that somebody's going to be in tears after the show. So I think you need to give Terry some lessons, right?
So many times on the sim already, my brother.
I must tell you, Patrick, there was bitter rivalry between these boys in the early months of COVID. And when I say these boys, it includes Clint as well. Faisal, I saw him. There's a lot of them.
Justin,
All the young ones.
Well, my outsider's view of the family, I see one problem developing here. I see one car and a lot of people keen on driving it.
That's the one. That's the only problem.
So is that a flip the coin situation, or who does the most work on the car gets to drive it?
Oh no, that's wrong. I do the most work on the car. That's the problem.
No, it's great to see the enthusiasm, and it's great to see the camaraderie you have inside your family as well, going into motorsport, and that's an element that you also tend to not see when you go on an event. But it's great; it brings the family together. If you got the correct spirit going into the sport, any sport, I would imagine, it's great to see everybody pull in and make that little bit of a difference to make it fun for everybody to stay involved. And it's not limited to just direct family. I'm sure good friends play a role in the background with you as well.
Yes, certainly.
So I want to know, has Theo spent more time with Andrea or with James on rally?
I think
all of that has changed.
Guys, take us to your current setup in rallies. We've announced this program as in support of autism. It's a subject that's not very well known out there, I believe, but it's got a very special meaning to you as a family. And it does catch the eye. When you walk up to a rally car and you see that on a car, you can't help but ask yourself why, and how does that relate to motorsport? And you've brought it into rallying in a quiet yet very direct way, because you can't miss that when you see that on the car.
Yeah, as you know, we've got an autistic grandson. Terry's eldest son is autistic, and how can I explain it? If you know autism, these kids don't like a lot of noise.
They don't like change.
Yes, they don't like you to change the world that's around them. And when we bought the old Levy's car and we started getting it together, and we did some sprints, started with some sprints, and he was around as a little boyki, and we always my daughter-in-law had to put earplugs in his ears so that the car doesn't upset him too much, the noise of the car. But I was so glad one day when we did one of Niels' sprints, and after the sprint we were able to take everybody on a little run around the short stage that he had there, and he happily strapped on a helmet. We strapped him into the passenger seat, and Terry took him out, and he was fine. He whenever the car is there, when Terry does work on the car, he wants to sit in the car all the time. So
Fantastic.
I think maybe that's a bit of change that we brought about in him.
Well, it's great to see that awareness, and Terry, it must be great for you to have your child participate in his own way and stay involved. I'm sure he's your greatest supporter as well.
Yes, he is. He's so mad over that rally car. I had it there the weekend as I fitted the motor back into the car to start prepping for next year. And he couldn't wait to see the car actually drive out of there. And then his mother actually had to stand by the gate because it was so dark already. His mother was standing at the gate so that he could see the car leave. And then he asked me afterwards, when is the car coming back?
Well, that's great to see that. And Well, my understanding of autism is there's nothing wrong with the child. It's just a bit different.
Yes, different, not less.
And the bottom line of that is he could be brilliant in some aspect that is still to be discovered. But
Yes.
yeah, I can't say enough about the way you do it as a family, and this awareness. You've does it create interest? Do you get how can I put it? Do people ask you questions about this on rallies?
Yes, we have had people that were interested and showed interest in what we have to show. Even one of Llewellyn's mechanics, Carl, his daughter is also autistic, and he actually messaged me with regards to how and what spectrum my son is on. And I actually gave him some information, and then he took that information and gave me also some information. And he said now that what we're doing is very good, and he's actually interested in going forward with us with the Race for Autism initiative.
Fantastic. That is great to hear.
Yeah, it's just an awareness really that we want to create. We want to
Well, you've certainly done that because
get people to know about it. Yes.
and it's good to know about it because it's like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just you need to be aware of what's going on around you in this world. We tend to live in our own bubble when we don't see what's happening around us, and being aware certainly helps. But I've got to get back to the question. You just said you put a motor in the car. Your son's all excited about it. So I take it somehow you've resolved the issue as to who will be doing the driving and the navigating and the servicing next year. I see Andrea is not going to answer this question.
With every event that comes up, I use the words that I have a circle to complete. So the only event that I've finished so far was the All-Star Rally a couple of years. When was it?
2019.
2019.
The first event we did
With the car, yeah. So I still need to complete the gravel event, and until I do,
I'll be driving.
yes.
Well, I can see there's two hungry lions next to you that will not mind kicking you out of that seat.
Mainly him.
There's also still a record that I want to check, and Patrick, maybe you can look that up. I don't think we'll make it because I think the oldest crew was probably Andrea Smith and Gerald Brace. I can't remember how old collectively they were when they lost.
About 300 years.
And that was our plan with the portable, the Rheede rally. I wanted to take James with me as navigator, and we wanted to see if we could maybe do the CCMCC record. Maybe we could have.
Yeah.
taken
You know, I said 300 years now, but I think that's another element of the rallies that makes it fantastic. Age is just a number. If you think you're old, you're old. If you go there with the right mindset, you can rally forever. And I'm sure Andy's not done yet. He'll be back. While there's good health,
With his new knees.
you will carry on.
We can look at Robbie Robertson. He was
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was very old when he finished.
No, you don't have to finish at all. This is very few will ever achieve the status as world champion or whatever the case might be, but we can all enjoy the sport. And that's something we tend to miss. Everybody wants to have the biggest, the best, the fastest, but at the end of the day, it's more important to simply enjoy what you've got.
Yeah. No, our goal is now to maybe.
Of course, unless you Clint, then you just park the car in the driveway and look at it every second.
Yes.
Leave my ornaments alone, eh?
If you're looking for somebody to drive you for next year, I'm here.
He can give your dad a run for his money.
Drive and drive. My dad will probably beat me.
But I see Neil's posted a comment here, and I don't know if you guys can remember his mother navigated for him also a few years back.
Yes.
And he's saying his mother's going to be 90 next year, and she might be back navigating. And in June of this year at the WRC, there was a Polish guy that was also 90.
Absolutely.
And he actually did the WRC at the age of 90.
Sure.
And he said he's
So-
coming back at the age of 100 to do it again. No, it's great to see this. And, as we said, if you can still go rallying at 90, what a pleasure. What an absolute honor to be able to do that still.
There's no better sport other than rallying.
Yeah, it's a terrible drug. They always say get your kids involved in motorsport because then they won't have money to spend on drugs and all kinds of alcohol. But it's a very addictive sport, and at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of good that can come out of motorsport. It's not just about motorsport. It's not about just racing. It teaches you a lot of things in life, and I think and Andrea and Theo, you've gone through the whole pathway of growing into the sport, and it's not just about learning about the sport. I think it's done a lot for you, the cohesion in your family, and everything else. It's got you to stick together. It's got you to do things together, and I think that's what families are about: is to do things together.
Yeah, we started early in our lives together. One time, I'm just remembering. I don't know if you remember the event. It was a national where Serge came out of the lime works
Oh, yes.
and took the
Took a wheel off.
quarter of his
as he
car
came
off.
up.
Now we spectated in that lime works there that time, and Andrea was pregnant with our eldest son Alan. He's not here. I'm sure he's watching, and that was on I think the 3rd of April that year. And Andrea's mom had just passed away on the 2nd, and her father said we had planned to go on the event for the whole 3 weeks before that, and then her father said to us, what are you guys gonna do here? Go on the event. And he chased us, and we went and spectated the event. I still had an old Escort 1600 Sport that we went to go and spectated in.
It wasn't yellow, was it?
It was orange.
So Jan Sol almost had competition in those days.
Yeah, those were the days. And of course I did before that, and before we got married even. I remember I had an old Datsun 1600 Triple S, and there was some sprints that were done in the Stellenbosch, Somerset West area. It was the Salfords Rally Sprint. There was the Knorrook Farm. And those years, you could do it in a standard car as long as you had helmets. And Andrea's brother and I did a couple of those sprints, and I remember one of the competitors in those sprints was Selwyn Woodley in a similar car that we had, but it was the rally version. And with him, I think at that time was Dennis Pillay. I might be wrong, but I think he was around that time as well. So that's a long time. That's early 80s. That's 82, 83 years.
The Pops Robert series was extremely
Yes, that's
popular
it.
with all its rally sprints and hill climbs and gymkhanas and regularity rallies. It's an element that I feel should come back. We've forgotten what it's like to be part of a club scenario, but there was healthy competition between the 5 rally clubs in the Cape, and nowhere was it seen better than on these Pops Robert events. Even guys like Ines Marutke used to compete in these events, and that was great. You had the you have to have the senior guys there to set a goal for the junior guys, and they enjoyed that. The communicating with those guys on these events. That's where you learn the trade and grow in the sport.
Yeah. We've had a long road. I think maybe one day I'll make a comeback to arrowing again. Maybe when the national comes to
said
Cape
no
Town.
more.
Well, I think that's a protest because she knows if you get involved, she's going to have to get involved.
Exactly. That means if the national does eventually come to Cape Town, I get to drive the national then again.
I can see a few plans coming through. Yeah. You're going to have to do those events quickly, Theo. Your seat's not safe anymore.
It wasn't safe after Portable already.
Well, I think, unfortunately, we've already hit an hour again, Clint. The time just flew past tonight.
Yes, and I'm checking my battery pack here because I've got the power outage at the moment.
That comment that Mike made, it was a joy being with him in the rally car.
But you opened this one up.
Don't say that so loud, man. How are we going to live with Mike after this now again?
I would like to see Mike come back next year in one of the 2 cars or one of the 3 cars that he got.
He's collecting cars and he sounds like Clint these days. He'll tell you about all these cars, but you'll never see them move.
I learned from Mike.
Something that Mike did say here, and that is a great compliment to you as a family, and that is when Billy Bright used to always say that if the Croys were doing the arrowing, you didn't need to check the route markings. And if there's a message tonight, then it's the dedication you put into it, and we can, as competitors, organizers, opposing clubs, opposing competition, will all give you that credit and say well done, and thank you for a great service to the sport over the years.
Yeah, and Uncle Billy also was one of the best guys that I ever worked with. He never had an issue with us. You can ask James as well. Oh, James is the same. You can ask James as well. We never ever had an issue with him.
Yeah. We learned a lot from him.
Yeah. We also worked on the off-road those years, the Adenko. We did that. Yeah. Also with the CP guys.
The good news is at this stage, it sounds like the Darling Rally will be the first event in 2022. So you can consider doing the arrowing there, because I think Terry lights up again, because then he can drive and you do all the dirty work.
No, Darling is too rough for me. I will break the car. Clint, I think I should use your car then, rather.
If he makes admissions like that on TV, then Theo, no ways you're giving him the key again.
Well, you can see there after the Portable rally, and that was a mild rally. So I don't know if he says Darling is too rough, and I don't know what the car is going to look like after that.
Like I said, thank you very much for all you've done for the sport, and we look forward to having you as a family around for many, many years to come.
Thank you. We enjoyed every minute of it.
No, for sure. Okay. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
You too.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you guys.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
And a thank you to Byron behind the scenes somewhere as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Byron and Bevan.
And Bevan, yeah.
Yeah.
So apologies, Bevan. We didn't forget about you, but we don't see you on the screen.
Okay, see you
Thank
guys.
you, Byron.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.